Welcome everyone to the JBK Show. On this week's episode, we have a great guest, entrepreneur, businessman. What else can we describe you? Content creator nowadays, Mark Bouris. Thank you for jumping on. Did I get the pronunciation right?
You got it right.
Bouris, yeah. Now, Mark, people enjoy your content, whether you're a man like my father or some of my best mates enjoy your content. You transcend generations.
Going from, the older generation to the younger generation, TV personality now to the mentor, content creator. How do you transcend generations?
That's a good point. Well, probably, I guess, I never really thought about it, but I think the reason why older people listen to me is because I've actually dragged them along with me from a long time ago. So, a lot of people followed me from TV shows and stuff like that a long time ago. To some extent, I think I've dragged them along. And then at the same time, I continually try to stay relevant with content, or more importantly, with my guests, which is my content, which then engages younger people. So I try to do it that way. I stay relevant to my older generation of followers that I collected a long time ago, and then I try to collect younger audiences by bringing in people who might appeal to them. It's not me personally. I'm not doing anything that appeals to anybody.
Do you think maybe parents have forced their children to kind of follow you because they know you're successful, and the parents followed that advice and thought, you know what, Mark's the guy, go follow him, and that's kind of maybe picked up the younger generation?
Oh, that's quite possible. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a universal principle. There would be some, for sure. I mean, I do know, like a bloke I met, I was at a function and a guy came to me and he said, I told my daughter a long time ago to listen to you for business advice. And advice just about mortgages, property, business, whatever. He said, I said, this is true, I said something on TikTok that if you're a young person, don't bust your ass thinking that you need to get a mortgage and buy property. Maybe if you've got enough money, you should invest it in business and make money that way, then buy a property down the track. And he confronted me because he said to me, I've been telling my daughter she's got to get in the property market. And I said the opposite. I said, but you already told your daughter to listen to me, so that's my advice. And he was sort of upset with the fact that he told his daughter to listen to me in the first place. But that is still my advice, by the way. And it went quite viral because it's some of my generation going against the grain. I'm not saying, by the way, go and spend your money like a drunken sailor. I say invest in something else that might, if you invest in the right thing, it might flip pretty hard. You could, you spend 10,000 and turn into 500,000 if you do it right.
Do you know if she started a business or not?
I don't know. And I don't even know who she is. I don't know her or anything about her. I just sent out this message. It was, we filmed in my studio. It was my younger staff members asked me about it. We produced some of my stuff. And I just told them what I thought. And then they said, wow, we want to put that on TikTok because that appeals to us. I didn't even know.
Do you think advice for the younger generation has changed over time? Because so long it's been go to university, get a job, and set yourself up with a property. Whereas nowadays, I know you're a university graduate as well. Do you think that it's almost become oversaturated in the market now? Everyone can go and get a university degree, and the more people that are more so successful now are the ones that have dropped out of uni and pursued what they want.
That is probably the most important question that exists today for parents and kids who are leaving school. That is, without a doubt, the most important question there is. Therefore, the answer's got to be the most important answer. So I want to be very careful, okay? When I went to school, I left school more than 45 years ago.
Did you go to, by the way?
St.
You're a
John's
punch bowl boy.
St. John's Lakemba.
There you go. Benil was it?
Then I went to Benilde Bankstown after that.
Okay, that's where our old man went.
I went to Benilde in year 11 and 12, and in those days called fifth form, sixth form, but I went to St. John's Lakemba up to that point, and before that I was at St. Jerome's in Punchbowl. When I went to school 45 years ago, if you wanted to do better than your parents, and assuming there's no money being given to you and there's no business you inherit or go into, you had to go to university and improve your position. Today, people say, I hear a lot of people say, oh, that's not necessary. Well, I don't believe that. I believe it's still a good thing to do that. But it's not the only way you can make money. You can make money doing lots of business sort of ventures and going into business. So when I was that age, it was the only way you can really improve your life. other than going to your dad's sandwich shop or, whatever the business was and work your ass off for the rest of your life. And maybe when dad decides to hand it over to you or the mechanic store or whatever it was that he was running, you might start to make a good quid, but you're going to have to hang in for 30 or 40 years. So that wasn't for me. So therefore I would say this, parents and young people, you can either go to university, but it's not the only way you can get there. But I think going to university today gives you a really good fundamental understanding of how to learn. You don't come out with any particular skill, but you learn how to learn. That's really important. But there are other ways to learn how to learn too. We have internet, we have got ChatGPT. So you've got lots of different ways of learning stuff that you need to know about.
Because with university, when you went to university, I think you've been on record saying your mum kind of forced you to go. Yeah. That kind of probably what happened to us as well, is like, your parents saying, that's what they've done.
100%.
Go to university.
My dad did accounting. It's the only reason why I did accounting at university. Did a Bachelor of Business as well. I think you went along the same path, but you end up doing something completely different. How necessary do you think university is nowadays for young people? And would you have gone into it without the influence of your parents?
No, I would definitely want to go to university if my mother hadn't taken me up to the university to enroll. I wanted to become a brickie or something like that.
You played a bit of footy too back in the day.
Yeah, all I wanted to do then was play footy, continue playing footy in the Canterbury Bankstown district. I was in the rep side, so I had
played a bit of SG ball.
Yeah, I played SG ball, and I played with a lot of guys who ended up playing first grade. Some played State of Origin. So, I was in a good side. I did well at footy, and I loved it.
Oh, because I know Graham
Hughes.
Because you could have been one of the entertainers at the Bulldogs.
There could have been.
Could have been.
Well, a lot of my mates, I moved away when I was 17, but a lot of my mates still stayed there. And I used to go back to the Leeds Club after Canterbury games. And upstairs there was a bar or nightclub type thing right at the top of the building. And I used to go up there all the time, and I used to love it. I mean, it was in my blood. But over time, I sort of weaned myself off it. I stopped going to the games. I stopped following it. In those days, you didn't have internet. You didn't have Instagram. Nothing I could follow. It was a mission to follow something. I didn't have a television where I was living.
Sounds like hell.
So I couldn't watch it. Yeah, totally. It was hell to me. So I had to realign myself with other sort of outlets. John, I think what's really important here, right, is that learning how to learn is critical. Too many people don't learn how to learn. What's important about learning is that it allows you to reconnect with audiences and make yourself relevant. To make yourself relevant, you've got to know what the content is. To know what the content is, you've got to learn what the audience wants. To learn what the audience wants, you've got to know how to actually analyze shit. And a lot of people don't know how to do that. And university put me in that position. I mean, I did a commerce law degree. I did a master's degree after that. And I didn't really come out with a great deal of skill. Come out with no skill, some knowledge, but no skill. But what I was good at was learning. And that's what I've done all my life. I continually learn. I have a thirst for learning, and I would like to take that thirst to the grave. For me, at my age now, I'm 67, I want to make sure that for the next 20 years, I continually keep my mind sharp by learning, and every single day. Like John Kavanagh, who had my podcast one time, the famous coach of Conor McGregor, he wrote a book called Win or Learn. There's no such thing as failure. So learning is such an important part of my fabric.
Well, in saying that, you've kind of transitioned, not career paths over time, but you've moved from going to home loans to now doing the mentor and being on television. Is it challenging to navigate through different mediums, especially, TV, now being on social media? What's the most challenging part about learning different things?
Especially as you get older. Were you better when you were younger, or is it now you're finding it easier with a lot more experience?
Probably the latter. And now I'm older. But when I was younger, I didn't care about the outcome. I just was interested in the experience. So I've never been a person who really cares what the outcome is. I don't get nervous or worry, what happens if it fails? I never think that. I don't like to fail, but I don't think, what happens if this fails? I don't start looking at all the possibilities because I know there's too many possibilities mathematically. So I just am interested in enjoying the experience.
But what motivates you to keep going? Like I said, you're 67. A lot of people would have called it a day and retired by now. You've gone from, selling off wizard home loans, getting $500 million at one time in a hotel in New York, and you still have a hunger to keep going. What motivates you to keep going?
Well, it's not money. What motivates me to keep going is a really simple thing. I want to keep learning and keep doing stuff and be productive until the day I die. And in fact, it keeps me younger and more alive than it would do if I just did what a lot of my mates do, and that's retire. For me, retirement is like sending a message to your system genetically.
The day white flag.
I'm out. Okay, and then over time you slowly but surely wind down. But you wind down to the ultimate position, that's when you're laying down and you don't ever get up again.
Coffin.
So correct. So for me, I want to challenge the statistics of the average age of a male dying in Australia being 82 years of age. I'm up for challenging statistics. So that's what drives me. What motivates me is to do that. So I've looked at I have a long-term goal. That's my long-term goal. So therefore I have to have a plan. And the plan is about keeping my brain occupied all the time. In other words, keeping the neurological system regeneration. And that the only way you can do that is by stimulating it. So I stimulate it through the things I do, the businesses I'm in, and then try and make sure myself physically I'm very healthy. So that's exercise, training, but it's not just going and playing and hit a few rounds of golf or whatever. It's actually, again, stimulating it at a cellular level, everything within my body, and then making sure that I nourish everything inside my system with the latest nutritional stuff. So I'm going to learn about the nutritional stuff too. And I'm going to talk to those people. And I'm lucky, I meet people in all sorts of circles, so I get to meet lots of, scientists.
Probably
and
at the top of their field as
well.
well.
Totally.
Yeah.
And one thing I observed about Kerry Packer is that Kerry was not a reader, right? Kerry was dyslexic. He couldn't read. So what he would do though, he would get in the best and sit down and cross-examine them for 5 hours. Now think about this. You go and get Victor Chang on heart, for example. You get Victor Chang into your office, and Victor Chang let's say he spent 30 years at the top of the tree. He knows, let's say he knows pretty much everything about hearts. Kerry sits down for 5 hours and gets out of that guy exactly what he needs in 5 hours, what Victor Chang spent 35 years on.
He just picks up information that quickly?
That quickly.
Wow.
So, because he knows, he picks up the information that's relevant to him, to what he wants to know, why he wants to know it. So I learned that and I thought to myself, well, that's pretty good. So what I want to do is put myself in a position of influence where I can meet these people and sit down and ask them, which is what I do in my podcast.
That's the mentor.
Yeah. That's it. Well, ask them what I need to know.
You've done that over time. Like you've sat down with people like Donald Trump, but then you also, like in today's day and age, you sit across with people like Spanion and, some OnlyFans creators. You're learning from a lot of people. Who's been some of your favorite guests that you've learnt from?
Boy, at Straight Talk, my Straight Talk podcast, definitely Spanion. Like it's really because what I learned from him is
I've met him. He's extremely charismatic. He's a great talker
how
as
cool
well.
he is for your generation.
Yeah.
And I started, why is your generation
Gravitating towards it.
even straight people, like not not criminals, like why do you think Spanion is cool? And is that telling me something about audiences? Is there a demographic change? Is there a societal change in relation to someone like Spanion? And then what is it about him that attracts it? Like it's not only his charisma. There's something about the way he looks. It's also his history. It's the fact that he's turned his back on crime and that he's making good coin out of doing what he loves doing. Your generation loved to do what you love doing. My generation, what it was like, it was, it doesn't really matter if you love it, you just go and do it and grind away, dude. And if you don't like it, bad luck, don't complain. Just turn up to work and keep doing it for 20, 30 years and maybe you'll pay your mortgage off and you've got a house. The other generation, like your generation, or the people like Spanion, don't think that way. So therefore, that informs me of what products I might need to have or services I might need to have for even in your generation. It allows me to do like proper analytics and surveys by talking to the people who influence you. So he influences millions of people. I'm never going to get to talk to those people, so I just need to talk to him. That's my game. And I had Angela White, a porn star. Unashamedly. Famous porn star.
Aussie.
Lives in LA. One of the biggest earners on OnlyFans in the world. 0.001%. That's the level she's at.
You a big fan of hers, Mark?
No. I didn't even know who she was until she came in. Until I saw the brief, okay?
Okay.
But what's amazing is about how open people are about sex today.
Yeah.
And whereas when I was growing up, you wouldn't have. That's the thing, you had to go and steal from the newsagent, a magazine called
Become
Rival.
so much accessible now.
You know, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And but no, she walked in my office. She had a publicist with her, a hair and makeup person, a hair person with her, and a makeup person with her. Every 10 minutes, they stopped filming and to fix all the makeup. And business as a profession, absolute professional. And she knows everything about OnlyFans. OnlyFans, I sort of knew about it, but I didn't really know about it because it's not something I've been onto. Now I've seen it. I've seen how it works. I know what she does, and it's just an amazing platform for creators, especially in content creators, especially in her category. So I'm lucky I get to meet these people. Like I had the guys from Muscle Chef.
Yeah.
Recently on my mental podcast. I had the guys from Harrison AI on my podcast, and they just raised $100 million, trying to make doctors' lives at a clinical level much easier. So these people are teaching me all the time.
And you try and forecast what you think the future is going to be from your learnings. And more recently, you've come out and opined on things like ChatGPT, influencer AI. You're always putting out interesting content around the RBA and interest rates going up and how that's going to affect the economy. For young people like us, wanting to make investments, wanting to get into the market, you know, we find it a bit challenging. I think I can speak for a lot of young people. We don't know whether we should rent, whether we should save, whether we should buy a property, whether we should put all our money into cryptocurrency. You've forecasted the next couple of years of what's going to be. Everyone's talking about a recession. What do you think young people should be getting into with that forecast in mind, that it's going to be maybe a tough couple of years, interest rates going up, you know, affordability and housing prices going down? What would your advice be now in 2023 for young people?
The first piece of advice is don't assume, because you've always had a job and you've never seen a recession, that you're always going to have a job and that you're never going to see a recession. And one of the hallmarks, on the weekend, I spent a lot of time listening to a very old economist, but a very famous economist in America called Milton Friedman. You might remember Milton Friedman if you did economics at the uni. Did you do economics in your degree? Milton Friedman and Keynes, Keynes, were the two competing economists, but they had different views. Keynes was about governments spending big and spending the way out of recessions, or spending the way out of the Great Depression, for example. That was the Keynes theory, right? And Milton Friedman was the other way. Milton Friedman used to say, if governments spend, we're going to create inflation. Inflation is the biggest enemy of society today. Okay, so obviously we're in an inflationary period. We've just come out of a big spending period, which was the Keynes solution to COVID, and all governments adopted that. And I was listening to what Friedman said in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and everything he predicted has now come true. And I've been thinking about that, and I thought about it in relation to young people who've never seen a recession in Australia, because we've been in recession for 30 years.
2008, 9, we were children.
Yeah, but it wasn't. We didn't have a recession.
Australia.
We were the first to bounce back out of it.
GFC though.
We were lucky.
But no recession. We still haven't had a recession in Australia for 30 years. Like I think we're the only country who's had on year positive gross domestic GDP for the last 30 years. Netherlands was the record holder prior to us. Now Australia's the record holder.
Since 1990 we've had a constant GDP increase.
Correct. Now, and of course recession means, GDP negative, a couple of negative quarters, or let's say we get 4 negative quarters, but definitely 2. What Friedman was predicting is that with every recession, expect an increase in unemployment. So to answer your question, John, I would say to anyone out there, protect your job. Don't make the assumption that your job is safe, which is the assumption they all make. I want more money. That's okay. You might be entitled to more money. So go about your job in a different way. Make sure you go to whoever you report to or whoever's the owner of the business. What else can I do? Can I do a bit more? Don't be afraid to come up with ideas and try and move your way into the purview of the person that you're working for. Just don't become a number who just goes to work. I'll leave at 5. I'll work from home 3 days a week. You never get to see me. I'll just do my job and that's it. That's my advice.
Well, as a person who's got a lot of experience in business, there's a side hustle culture nowadays, especially among young demographic, whereas you have your full-time job, but you want to be an entrepreneur and you're doing something on the side, whether it's drop shipping or coming up with your own business. When can you make a distinction to where I want to drop everything and make this full time? And are you saying we should probably hold off on doing that in the future, like at least in the next coming years?
Well, I wouldn't go full time on my side hustle until the side hustle was generating enough money to replace the job. And I would always keep my job until I got to a point where an inflection point where I just couldn't do both physically.
Where you're exhausted, so you
Yeah.
fully utilize your full-time job until you absolutely don't need, or you don't have any time for it.
Especially if you're young,
Yeah.
particularly if you're not married, particularly if you've got no kids, particularly if you've got no obligations.
Isn't that the time to take risks though when you have no
That's the
obligations?
risk.
And you...
That's the risk you're taking. The risk you're taking is you're going to wear yourself out.
You're
That's a good
absorbing
risk.
everything.
Just 100% on what you're doing. The two jobs.
Yeah.
The two jobs. And then at some stage, if the world improves, because if you have a side hustle, at some stage, you're gonna have to, if it's going good enough, you're going to have to raise some money. And you can't raise money at the moment. So in recessions, the thing that causes a recession, well, the thing that causes inflation, which causes a recession, the thing that causes inflation is money, M2, what they call M2.
Yeah.
Money in the system. Quantitative easing is what we just all gone through, US, Australia, etc. Government spending money like drunken sailors, doing this and that, the other. What we're in right now is a contraction of money. So M2 is now contracting. So right now, and what that means is there's just less money in the world as a percentage of growth. So therefore, if you're trying out there, you've got a side hustle, you're trying to drag money for investors are going to say, not interested, boys, because I can put my money in the bank and earn 5%. That's no good. So investors are going to move away. So if you can't expand your business because you can't raise money, then I'm saying stay working, funding your side hustle with your wage, and then when the market opens up again, because these recession periods don't last very long, 9, 10, 12 months, something like that, historically, might be a little bit longer, but it doesn't matter. Then you say, right, now I'm going to go raise the dough because the market's open up, there's more liquidity in the system, and I'll be able to pay myself a better wage, perhaps, and there won't be any pressure on me to continue my day job to fund it. That's the strategy.
And then looking apart from side hustles and stuff like that, we're obviously going into a recession. You think it's going to be a recession. What do you think the most high priority investments would be over the next, 12 to 24 months?
Just stay safe.
Secure your job.
Right now, it's a secure job, but invest in safe things, like things with a yield. So I would say about things like crypto or digital currencies that are not backed. Anything that's not regulated, to me, run. If it's not backed by any assets, so if you're buying crypto, maybe if it's backed by the US dollar or if it's backed by bullion or something along those lines, maybe that's something worth investing in. Crypto requires liquidity in the system to do well. The reason everyone says, cryptocurrency did so well in the last 5 years, the reason why was governments were throwing so much money at the system.
Institutional money coming in.
People got money, they go, I've got to spend it somewhere. I'm getting no return at putting my money in the bank. I'm getting like less than 1%. I might as well have a crack at crypto. We're now at a different stage. Liquidity is being withdrawn, so people don't have as much money to invest. And when they do invest, they want a yield. And the yield that they want is going to be pegged against what you can get in the bank. And you can get in the bank 4.5%, 5%, or some of these fund managers who just give a cash equivalent fund manager paying 6.5%. Look at some of these guys that advertise on radio. I'm not going to say their names, but some of these better known cash trusts, mortgage trusts, they're paying 6.5%, and they're backed by a mortgage. So why would you go buy a crypto which is backed by nothing? Now someone's going to say to me, but Mark, you can buy them really cheap now. Okay, I'm prepared to forego that upside until I know we're in an upside period.
Well, I do fall into that category.
I put my flood money straight into the crypto
market. So,
well, that's very stupid.
Yeah, but if you've got extras and you don't know what to do with it, that's fine. And by the way, if you've got a responsibility, that's a bet.
Yeah. No, it's a pure gamble.
You're taking a bet, okay?
Yeah.
I'm talking to people, to you guys and everyone who might be listening, that's probably not the safest way to invest, that's not the wisest ways to invest at the moment. Now, wise doesn't mean I'm better than you. Wise just means I've got more experience. So someone with me with wisdom and experience, how would I go about this period? But that doesn't mean it's a better outcome than you're going to do, because you buy cheap. And if you can afford to hang on there, hopefully it'll kick and you'll make money.
You're not forecasting the future. You're just preparing for what the best case, or not the best or worst case scenario really is, how to handle your money.
I'm just saying, what does experience and data tell me is the optimal way to invest, not the best way. There's a big difference. Optimal is managing risk and return. You know, you guys might remember from university, there's a thing called the Sharpe ratio. And the Sharpe ratio is relative to risk, what gives you the best return. So if you want 100% risk, then that might mean invest in crypto or some other weird thing. But if you're a person who says, no, I just want like, 8% risk, then you would go invest the way I'm talking about. So I'm sort of applying a Sharpe ratio style of investing. That's what I'm saying.
Another finger that you have your pie in is
or another pie I have my finger.
Another pie you have your finger in, you could say, is your association with the Roosters. Very prestigious club. Nick Politis runs over there, fellow entrepreneur from Greece as well. Now, what is your association with the Roosters? Are you on the board there? How does that work?
So I've been on the board for nearly 20 years now. On the board of the Roosters. I joined the board back in early 2000.
Are you one of those third-party sponsors that helps out the boys? Or?
No, I don't. I have done it in the past. I don't these days. As a director, we can't. So we've got to be careful that way. But I used to, prior to becoming a director, I used to sponsor Freddie, Brad Fiddler, and I sponsored the State of Origin. I did a lot of sponsorship. It doesn't mean we don't put money into the club. All the directors put money into the club.
You sponsored the State of Origin with Wizard.
Yep.
A while ago.
10 years.
Yeah, wow. And I think you got a bargain on that deal at the time.
Yeah, relatively speaking, compared to today, that's for sure. I got it for $250, $350, and $550 year 1, 2, and 3.
They're usually $1 million plus sponsors.
Well, it ended up being $1 million a year after that. But I mean, I did it for 10 years. It was $1 million plus at one stage.
Do you credit that for putting the Wizard name out there?
It's an interesting thing, sponsorship. If you remember, you won't remember, but I remember a thing called Who's Tommy? There was a campaign on the side of buses back maybe 20 years ago. It said, Who's Tommy? Who is Tommy? And everyone said, who is Tommy? Like, what the hell? Like, it was a big billboard type campaign. And it was about Tommy Hilfiger, the brand. And this was a global thing. And everyone said, who is Tommy? And then everyone started saying, well, who is Tommy? So something like Wizard, who no one knew anything about.
For context, Wizard Home Loans. I'm talking to the kids that may not know who Wizard Home Loans are. They were like an Aussie Home Loans. You were kind of almost a direct competitor. You modelled it off Aussie Home Loans.
No, I sort of did. I come up with branches, and John used to operate through mobile lenders. That was his model. My model was physical branches around Australia and in New Zealand. We're quite big in New Zealand as well. And the difference between Aussie and Wizard is that Aussie was in partnership with Macquarie Bank, and Macquarie Bank funded it. Wizard, we funded all our own stuff. We had our own program that we owned. Slightly different, similar though, in that we both went after the bank market share.
Yep.
But the Wizard name, so it did work for me in the first few years because people said, "Who's that name?" It just said Wizard, not Wizard Home. It just said Wizard across the chest. People say, "Who is that? What the hell?" So people started to inquire. But what you have to do is you have to back it up with it. So if you spend, say, $1 million on sponsorship, you need to spend $2 million on advertising. So I spent a lot of money on advertising. I was lucky because Kerry Pack was my partner. So I spent it on Channel 9. Channel 9 still is the tele-broadcaster for the State of Origin, for Rugby League. So I got double dip. So, it's about leverage. I mean, I'm just leverage on leverage.
Do you think jersey sponsors have the same effect nowadays? I feel
No.
like back then, now it's kind of oversaturated as well. Yeah.
Well, there's more sports too now. So there's all the big bash stuff. I mean, there's so many teams with so many sponsors. It's a bit like, 30 years ago there was, Channel 9, Channel 7, ABC, Channel 10. Then all of a sudden Foxtel came along. There's another 90 channels. Every one of them gets diluted.
If you're just going off data, there was more viewership back then on your jersey sponsor than there is now.
It was more concentration of viewers on less channels, of which the channel I was watching had just about every sport viewer because it didn't have as many sports. So tennis wasn't as big, rugby union wasn't as big, soccer wasn't as big. No way soccer. I mean, there was soccer, but it was like Sydney Olympic versus Croatia, the Croatian team, whatever. It wasn't even televised. Everything. Now everything's televised. I mean, you go on ESPN, you go on Fox Sports. There's about 1 million sports: UFC, boxing, everything. It was much more powerful then.
Yeah, and also going back to your role at the Roosters, there's obviously not reports, but it's kind of known that when they go and sign some of the big names, the Brandon Smiths, the Cooper Cronks,
Tedesco,
they bring them in and say, this can be your future beyond football. What is your role in the talks with signing on big names and selling them a big future at the Roosters and in Sydney?
Well, Brandon Smith's a good example. So in order to get Brandon to join us, I went and took Brandon to lunch in Bondi, at a well-known restaurant there, and took him with one of the other directors, and we sort of said to him, mate, at our club, we like to look after our players beyond rugby league. We like to help you out with a mortgage if you qualify. If you need any advice on where to buy or what to buy, or if you've got a business, we're always available to talk to. And I think the difference between a lot of other clubs and our club is that players get access to us, the directors, whereas a lot of other clubs, the directors disassociate themselves.
They keep
with the players,
the football department and the behind the scenes.
The director, the directors are over here, up there somewhere. If you're a player, you got to deal with the coach and the admin staff and the CEO. We don't operate that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't imagine the West Tigers have their directors taking players out to lunch.
No, I'm not having a go at other clubs, but it seems like the Roosters.
Well, that's our model, though.
Yeah.
And we love doing it, though. I mean, we don't do it because we're trying to recruit. I want to meet Brandon Smith. He's
keeps it youthful.
He's cool. He's a cool kid, and a really cool kid, and he's a bit wild, but he's cool. And I want him to play for our club, and I want to get a sense of the guy by talking to him. I don't know. I don't want to sit in a boardroom and someone comes and says, "Oh, this is what Brandon Smith's deal is." I want to meet the dude.
Mm.
Well, that's why as Bulldogs fans, we look at you. You obviously grew up in Punch Bowl, played your junior footy for the Bulldogs. How did you go to the Roosters and not to the Bulldogs? What happened there?
Yeah, where's the affliction there? It's like you're a punch bowl boy.
It's a big one. It's a big one because I left the area when I was 17 and a half. I moved to Bondi because I was going to University of Kensington, and I never went back. So I never moved again back to that area. That's one. So I lived most of my life in east suburbs. But the thing that really, and I got sort of a bit disassociated with footy because I was at uni, I was living in Bondi, I didn't see my friends, I just got disassociated with it a little bit. And then the Super League War started. And I didn't like the fact that Canterbury went with News Limited. I didn't like Canterbury crossing over.
Yeah.
And, mates of mine like Graham Hughes, Peter Moore at the time, who was the chairman of the Bulldogs, the famous Bullfrog, they went with the money. And I thought what they were doing was against tradition. I was living in the suburbs, and I thought, stuff it, I'm going to go with these suburbs. I'm going to go with these because they've remained traditional. And that's the only reason I did that. And then as a result of doing that, I went to games and I started going to meet people in the area. And then Politis just contacted me. He said, being in this sort of Greek community, would you like to come and join the board because we've got some resignations. And he knew I was, but I was a Roosters fan for about 6-7 years before I joined the board. So mostly the reason I left Canterbury is because I objected to the fact that they went and joined News Limited in the Super League War.
Well, I don't know about you, Nick, but if there's any opportunities at the Roosters, we'll be happy to come across. Seems like there's a lot great path to success there. Now, we do this with all our guests all the time. Quick fire questions. Whatever comes to mind, give me your first answer. Okay?
What, like one word? Or?
Yeah, one word or just quick thoughts. Real quick fire. Okay. Renting or buying?
Buy if you can afford.
Buy if you can afford. Blank is going to win the NRL season this year, and hopefully no biased answer.
Probably Penrith.
Penrith? 3P. Wow. Okay. Blank will be the most in-demand occupation in the coming years.
AI specialist.
AI specialist? ChatGPT?
AI expert. Anyone who's expert in AI programming.
Okay. Now, blank is the best place to invest your money right now.
Real estate.
real estate. Blank has been your favorite podcast or guest of all time.
John Kavanagh.
John Kavanagh, Conor McGregor's coach. Very wise. I follow him on Twitter. It's a great listen. very inspiring.
Mathematician, a university qualified mathematician, and an engineer, university qualified engineer. Gave it up to become a jiu-jitsu coach or an MMA coach.
That's a good one. But going back to AI, just quickly, you say specialists as in people that are going to be able to optimize the AI platforms. But do you see AI replacing occupations over the coming years? And what do you think that's going to impact the economy?
I think over time, yes, particularly advertising, marketing, teachers, journalists, maybe lawyers. But what's interesting about this, I don't know if you guys use it much. I've used it quite a lot. So it needs to evolve a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm talking about when I say best job for the next 5 years will be someone who knows how to help AI evolve in a programming sense, in a better analytical sense. But what's really interesting about this is AI goes into internet, scrapes all the information today that's been put up on the internet by people. So research, let's say it's a scientific outcome.
Yep.
Put up all these scientific information out there. So all these scientists have done all these experiments and they put up a whole lot of stuff about whatever it is, something about the brain. ChatGPT goes in there, scrapes it all, and then puts it into a logical conclusion, a deduction, and might put it into an essay, might put it into one paragraph. Let's say you've got these things going on for the next 10 years. All they're doing is going around and scraping everything that's on the internet, and they are replacing people's work, original work. Then all AI is going to be doing is scraping each other's AIs. And all you're going to do is AI is going to be scraping another AI. And if it puts people out of work, creating new concepts or making new deductions, then what's AI going to produce that's valuable? Probably nothing. So we've got to get AI to learn how to have original thoughts, not the scraping of everyone else's original thoughts, which is where it is at the moment.
Yeah.
It's scraping everyone else's original thoughts and putting it into a nice, logical conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when it's been doing that for 5 or 10 years and there are no more original thoughts?
Scary.
So it's just they're all just going to be copying each other.
Sounds like science about to take over.
So I wonder whether or not someone can work out how to give AI an original thought.
Well, there's already kind of a not market, but there's content being made around that. It's like how the best way to prompt a response from AI. So there's one thing, how you ask a question to AI is different to how I'm going to ask it. Now there's people saying this is the most optimal way to get the best answer out of it. So it's an interesting space, and I'm keen to see where it goes. Last one I'll leave you with, Mark, is you're not scared. Straight talk. You kind of, part of your appeal is you tell it how it is. There is instances in your content where you're not scared to shy away from political discussion. You know, more recently you've spoken about Australia Day and, you know, maybe Indigenous people having a voice to Parliament. I don't touch on that, but I'm also, do you see a future? You've got such experience across business and different domains. Do you see a future in politics for yourself? I'm sure you've been asked that before.
I'm not that interested in becoming a politician as such, because I think the model for politicians is quite boring.
Mm-hmm.
And also it's quite destructive. So, you know, you put yourself out there as a politician, the media is going to tear you apart.
Heavily scrutinised.
Yeah, too heavily scrutinised.
Go through the skeletons in the closet.
Everything, mate, like it'd be the worst outcome for me, especially. So I don't want to go down that track. And also I couldn't see myself living in the mothership for 6 months a year. I mean, that's the dumbest old-fashioned system that I've ever seen. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
May as well just work from home nowadays.
Well, yeah, but they got to go down. They've got to sit in Parliament.
Yeah.
At a federal level at least. I mean, maybe New South Wales, if you had to come to Macquarie Street, that's not too bad. That's pretty cool. But like, if you want to do it, you want to do it at a level where you can actually change it. But that doesn't mean I don't want to become political as such. So I like to influence change for the better.
Yep.
So over time, I think there will be synthetic platforms whereby you can influence change. In fact, I can imagine, just like we were talking about AI, I can imagine a form of artificial intelligence operating a parallel government system where people like you, particularly your generation,
Yep.
might be asked to vote in parallel on a particular topic. So let's take The Voice, for example. Can you imagine if I set up a program when The Voice went to Parliament for a vote, or when you went to the referendum, that I said, here's 5 questions about The Voice. and just answer on a computer in your area, wherever you happen to live. You live in the Belmore area, then whatever the local area is. I just get a computer, divide up the whole map. You guys can cast your vote. And if I gave you 5 different questions to what Albanese is going to give you, I wonder if I get a different outcome. And I can see political influence in that regard. And we've been talking about AI a lot, artificial intelligence. I can see quite a powerful platform being built by somebody, whoever the hell that's going to be, at some stage where there's a parallel government in play, but it's all online. It's digital. We've got digital currencies. Why can't we have a digital government?
That sounds interesting. And I'm sure with the rise of influencers and people like yourself getting into the content game, that's definitely going to happen down the line.
Save a lot of time and money.
Yeah, but I want to thank you for your time, Mark. It is a kind of a pleasure, but also a privilege to kind of pick your brain for a little while. We're 2 boys from the Canterbury Bankstown area as well. I'd like to hope we're on the same trajectory as you, but I'd like to sit across from influential people like you and take learnings from you is definitely going to be something I'll take into the future that we'll share. So I want to thank you for your time, mate. Really appreciate it.
Most welcome, John. Good on you, Nick. Thanks, guys. I enjoyed it, especially seeing guys from the area.
Yeah, 100%.